Letters from a Little Princess Monster. By Jorg. Chapter 72. New Life, New Lives, New Friends, Part 4. Trixie thundered up the stairs in the library, tripping on the top step again and almost face-planting into her own door, which stubbornly refused to open. "Oh," she added when Twilight Sparkle came running up a few steps behind her. "Open it. Open it. Thanks." Trixie wanted to burst through the door. She needed to burst through the door. She forced herself to simply open the door quietly and look inside, only to find a family of 4 ponies looking back. "SHH," whispered Diamond Tiara, who was sitting on the floor of Trixie's library bedroom on a dry rug, holding a wrapped-up towel with something both cute and cuddly wrapped in it. "He just got to sleep." Small yellow eyes from inside the wrapped towel gave the lie to her words, but at least the bat-winged foal was being quiet, much like Filthy Rich and Filigree, who were both looking at Trixie with far less fury than Trixie expected. "Trixie," called out Filigree from the bed, where she was resting postpartum. The Featherfluff Thomopedic 3000 was a mess, covered in things Trixie really did not want to think about, even incidentally, with the sheets torn off and thrown back, and a huge pinkish wet spot covering the bottom half. Filigree was saying something else, but all Trixie could think of was how much fire was going to be needed to clean the bed, and if there would be any bed left afterward. "Or library." "Trixie," said Filthy Rich in a serious but deliberate tone. "I just wanted to thank you." "And you," he added, turning his blue eyes onto Twilight Sparkle, who was trying to use Trixie as cover. "I didn't want to read your letters at first, but I'm glad I did. I just have one thing to ask." Filthy Rich cleared his throat and ran one hoof through his tangled mane before taking a deep breath, looking Twilight straight in the eyes, and asking, "Can you change us back now?" "Oh? Oh? Oh? You mean you went through?" Trixie looked over at her bed disaster with new eyes, taking in the exhausted expression and smears of frothy sweat in the way the real Filthy Rich in her new body was looking back. "It was certainly a novel experience," she said. "Okay, it hurt a lot," she added at Trixie's disbelieving stare. "A whole lot. But it went well. I have new respect for mares, and I think I have a connection to my son that no other stallion in Equestria can match." "My son," she added with a sniffle. "I never thought I'd say that." "Our son," said Filigree in Filthy Rich's warm tenor voice. "I carried him, you birthed him. And provided his first feeding," he added with a feminine giggle. "Yeah, that was weird." Filthy Rich brushed back a damp strand of her mane and gave Twilight Sparkle a long nod. "Anytime you're ready." It was a mark to how comfortable Twilight was getting with her spells that she had her horn glowing almost before the sweaty mare had finished speaking, and the brief flare of her magic cleared almost immediately afterward. "Better," said Filthy Rich, swaying a little on his hooves. "I think once will be enough for that spell, ever." "Yeah," said Filigree with a long wince as she rearranged herself on Trixie's spoiled sheets. "This brings back memories." "Mom." Diamond Tiara gave the mare a brief dirty look and returned to spoiling the little bat pony wrapped in what had once been Trixie's best towel. "I think we should call my little brother Midnight Valor." "Well, I think that decision will wait for a little while." Filthy Rich flicked his ears at the sound of Spoiled Milk's shrill cry outside of the library and looked over Trixie's shoulder at the 2 princesses who had slipped silently into the room while Trixie was distracted. "Your Highness, will you please preside over our wedding ceremony? I think Mayor Trixie has contributed enough to this memorable evening, and I've waited far too long for this moment." Trixie nodded mutely. Behind her, Celestia moved quietly down the stairs, whispering behind her, "Hurry up, Luna. I don't know how long I can hold her." The lunar princess in question proceeded slowly into the room, taking a moment for proper full adoration before drawing up before the disheveled couple. Delicate Filigree and Filthy Rich, entering the bonds of matrimony is an important decision, not to be made lightly. "Have you given proper consideration to your life together, and the lives which you have brought into this world. Every day over the last 8 years, said Filthy Rich. And very much so recently. I have run for far too long, said Filigree. I failed my daughter and my love. I will not fail them, or my son again. Very well. Princess Luna lowered her head, and the room filled with a soft, blue light. Beloved friends and relatives, we come together to bring this mare and this colt together in the bonds of sacred matrimony, a bond which cannot be broken, save by death. Taking this step is just one pace in a journey together that will extend from today in this room until the time you travel to Elysium Fields to be one with your ancestors. A frustrated bellow from outside drifted up the stairs. Where is my husband? I've been led on a bloody runaround all evening, princess. I want to see him now. If there are any here who would object to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace, said Luna in a much faster patter. Seeing no objection, may we have the rings? Filthy Rich dove on his frilled blue vest, which had been put to alternate childbirthing use, and grabbed 2 thin golden hoof bands before nearly throwing them to Luna. These rings symbolize a circle without beginning or end, worn as a symbolic manacle of your love binding each of you into servitude. No weight that had to do with slavery. Just a moment, rattled Luna as the sound of vengeful hoof steps began to clatter up the stairs. Do you love her? Yes, said Filthy Rich. Yes, said Filigree before Luna could speak again. I pronounce you wed. You may kiss the groom, snapped Luna almost under her breath as the 2 golden rings, nearly invisible wires of pure gold, danced out in her magic and wrapped around the right forehoof of the bride and groom. They were still kissing when Spoiled Milk stormed up the stairs and came to an abrupt halt in front of Twilight Sparkle, who had a low glow about her horn. You, hissed the older mare, although she did not move any further into the room. Twilight remained completely immobile in the doorway. Still stationary, Spoiled Milk glared at Filthy Rich, totally ignoring every other pony in the room, even the cute little foal and Princess Luna. You promised me, she growled. You promised a marriage. Mr. Rich lowered his head in a slow nod, but did not move the slightest away from Trixie's ruined bed and the tired mare sprawled out across it. Yes, I did. I would do anything for my daughter, Miss Milk. At one time, that included marrying you. It no longer does, as I have married her mother just now. I cannot say I am sorry, but I do regret your inconvenience. My inconvenience, hissed the mare. You made a fool of me today. You and this. Spoiled Milk started to poke a hoof at Twilight Sparkle, but came to an abrupt halt, and bit her bottom lip. Turning back to Filthy Rich, she hissed, divorce her, and fulfill your promise to me. Divorce. Luna looked puzzled, and looked between Filthy Rich and the furious jilted mare. What is this word? It is, Filthy Rich tugged at the thin gold band around his foreleg. Your Highness, it is when a mare and a stallion who have been married, have that marriage nullified so they may marry others. Luna's brow narrowed. Of what use would a second wedding vow be to a corpse? Thou art married until death do you part, yes. Filthy Rich nodded, but he was still scratching at the gold band, which showed no sign of coming off. Yes, Your Highness. Luna shook her head. A strange convention indeed. What would become of your surviving progeny after you violate your covenant? Would they be cared for by other family, or left without? The band won't come off, whispered Filigree, who had been scratching at her own wedding band. Richie, the band won't come off. Of course, said Luna in a completely matter-of-fact voice. You both still live? Spoiled Milk backed up a step, as if her right foreleg moved of its own volition away from the crazy. Of course, if you wish to join their union, said Luna in the same casual voice, we shall procure an additional band and enchant it for you also. Luna, said Celestia in a cautionary tone. We no longer permit polygamy in Equestria, and have not for several centuries. What? Luna gave a sharp frown. Certes, you speak of only the commoners. We are still entitled to 4 stallions, stout and true, to be kept within our household bedchambers, correct? Big Mac, who had poked his nose in the doorway a few minutes before, looked very much like he wished he was still downstairs. We will speak of this later, said Celestia in a mild rebuke. For now, no. Only one each, commoners and royalty alike. Right of first night, asked Luna in what was nearly a whine. Droit de Cygnus is likewise out of fashion, chided Celestia gently. Oh! Luna pouted. Drat! I seem to have placed my hoof in the middle of this one. Sully, we can still award noble titles in recompense for our errors, correct? Yes, said Celestia, but the barony for this vale has already been awarded. Ah, said Luna, perking up. For denying her choice of mates, we shall give her one of our own titles which she can use to attract one of the nobility. We have several spare titles, after all. What would you say to being Baroness Milk of the Everfree as compensation for my actions this eve? Spoiled Milk hesitated, only to have Luna continue. It is settled, then. We shall bequeath our least title to you, with the designated heir of Twilight Sparkles, so there is no danger of the lands escaping the family control, such as it is. You shall be entitled to the title of Baroness of Everfree, Lady of the Green, and the husband you find and wed shall be Lord of the Green, I so declare. Harmony sometimes consisted of 1,000 points of chaos all pushing against each other to the point where life just held still at the perfect apex. Luna had always been jealous of the way her sister played the game, moving pieces that she could not even see to counter forces that should never have been. The move Luna had just made with the newly minted Baroness of Everfree was a masterful stroke, worthy of some sisterly gloating when they returned to Canterlot. The new Baroness had been quietly scooted off to her home, the various elements of Harmony relatives all dosed with bowls of delicious gumbo, and even Fluttershy had tried a tiny spoonful of the more powerful stew and declared it, Varinus mei havi sapofio your beer please a thank you. Luna enjoyed her own bowl of blazing fire and questionable ingredients, but there was something off about it that the rest of the happy ponies did not seem to notice. So she had slipped over to the dragon when no pony had been watching and disposed of the evidence, bowl and all. Voralorix Levathuix Macrixbokrasvim most certainly did not complain, and in fact requested a second bowl, with a spoon for flavoring. Then it was time for their departure. Celestia, Luna, and Big Mac proceeded away from the library into the welcome darkness, lit only by the stars and occasional bursts of fireworks provided by energetic pony villains still awake at this late hour. The princesses and their escort walked for a short distance, then turned as one to face Big Mac, who was more than a little startled. Big Macintosh, son of Bright Macintosh, started Luna in a deliberate slow cadence, son of, help me out, Sully. Inheritor of the noble mantle which I placed upon your ancestor, C.D. Smith, said Celestia, picking up her part flawlessly, and most likely concealing the fact she could not remember the full lineage of their lover either. As much as it pains us, we must draw this portion of our relationship to a close. Luna lowered her head. You shall always remain special to our souls, for when I returned from my banishment, I found in your heart a place of peace and acceptance. And when I was filled with joy from the return of my sister, said Celestia, you helped me celebrate that overwhelming ecstasy in the fashion all pony kind has enjoyed, since the first. It is our wish that you remain within our embrace. Luna licked her lips. If things were different in the world, we would sweep you up to our mountain and make your every day and night a time of boundless passion. Unfortunately, we all have responsibilities, said Celestia very slowly in a voice tinged with regret. As heir to the Apple family, it is your destiny to find a mortal mate and continue your line, which you cannot with either of us. No matter how often we try, added Luna. Ahem. Yes, said Celestia, seeming a little uncomfortable for a moment. Responsibilities that we also share, for your life with us in our mountain home would be filled with conflict and hostility. Among other things, said Luna, who was having a very difficult time keeping a straight face, or not looking at the two other observing ponies back in the shadows of the trees. As such, we must end our relationship, Macintosh Apple, for the good of all. But let it be known that you carry the favor of your Princess of the Sun, and your line shall be blessed with our touch over the centuries that follow. Celestia plucked one short white feather from her wing and floated it over to be tucked behind Big Mac's ear. Live your life well, for you and your kin shall always carry our favor. Then she kissed him. It was a very long kiss, longer than they had agreed when Celestia and Luna had put their pointed heads together to plan out this day, but there had been substantial improvising in the schedule so far, so it was not a bad thing. Still, it was a very long kiss. Sully, hissed Luna under her breath after a while. When the kiss was over and Celestia returned to her sister's side, Luna stepped forward, took a deep breath, and continued. Would that our relationship could be continued until our children numbered more than the stars in my sky, she said. As such cannot be, I leave you with the gift of our kind, so that you may be as fruitful as thy orchard, and your offspring shall be without number. Luna plucked one of the short dark feathers from her wing and floated it over to tuck behind Big Mac's other ear. For you also carry the favor of your Princess of the Night, and your line shall be blessed with our touch also so long as the moon and stars shine upon thee. Then she kissed him. Only better. Hiding her satisfaction was difficult, but Luna stepped back and spread her wings with Celestia. Goodbye, Macintosh Apple, said Celestia. Until the day. Also fare thee well, Macintosh Apple, said Luna. Until the night. And united, the royal sisters rose into the sky and departed for Canterlot with long, slow strokes of their wings. They did not start giggling until they were certain they were out of sight. You are such a prat, dear sister, said Celestia through the giggles. I was perfectly able to tell how long I had been kissing him without your reminder. I thought for certain you would forget your restraint and take him right there if some pony did not gently jog your memory, said Luna with just as many giggles. Celestia broke into laughter. Oh, we did that this afternoon when you were distracted by the ring-tossing game at the festival. What? Surely, you jest. Luna turned her head sideways to look at her smug sister. You did. How clever. There was this little thicket of shrubs on the other side of the hill, said Celestia. Just the right size. She gave out a sigh. Oh, I'm going to miss him. Did you notice that when I kissed him, his tail stuck straight out? Luna snorted. Well, when I kissed him, his... Luna. Celestia giggled and flicked her tail. Oh, I feel like a little filly again. I'm just glad I kept the contraceptive spell going. She touched her chest where the quiet stellar wisp had been recuperating for several weeks. Junior really doesn't need a little brother. He keeps me too warm as is. A raspberry was Luna's instant response. Oh, sister. Our eggs have long since shriveled up and blown away on the winds of time. It hath been so long since my last heat that my womb hath a coat of frost upon it. Perhaps you should carry the wisp for a while, suggested Celestia. The air of carefree sisterhood faltered, as well as their synchronized wing beats. Nay, said Luna after they had regained their previous altitude. As tempting as it is to carry the fragile stellar life, it caused our little twilight sparkle such grief, and I would not be certain of my capacity to ensure its safety. Nightmare Moon is far too recent for my comfort of mind. Your solar baby shall be your burden until it hath recovered enough to be returned to its stellar nursery and finish developing. Perhaps after a few million years, it shall call you mother. Celestia's carefree laughter lifted a great deal of the dark burden off Luna's soul. She might not have enjoyed it as much if either of them realized the wisp was listening intently. On the ground, Big Mac watched the figures of Sun and Moon fly until he could not see them any more, off to Canterlot where they belonged. The last few months had been far more than he had ever expected, and yet there was no regret in his heart. His father had once told him to love without boundaries, restrictions, or limits, and although he was fairly sure Bright Mac had never really anticipated the situation his son was in, the old stallion would certainly be proud. Ahem. The voice was familiar, too familiar, and the shapes of two mares strode slowly out of the shadows until they stood in front of him, with matching expressions of, he was not quite sure. "Sugar Belle," he managed to say. Cheerily. Big Mac swallowed. "Nice night." "Extremely," said Sugar Belle. "Luna should be proud." "As should her sister," said Cheerily. "In fact, we told them as much this afternoon." "Individually," said Sugar Belle. "While you were distracted." "Oh." Big Mac glanced between the two mares, one from Ponyville and one from our town, where he had been making regular deliveries as of late. "We talked it over," said Cheerily. "At first, we considered just each grabbing a leg and pulling." "Too messy," said Sugar Belle. "The sisters offered us a compromise. You see, during the days you are at my town. And at nights here, mine," said Cheerily. She walked up to Big Mac, lifted her forelegs to hold him on either side of his head, and gently nipped the black feather out from behind his ear. Beside her, Sugar Belle likewise reached up and gently nipped the white feather out from his other ear. Then the two mares settled down in front of him and quietly tucked the feathers behind their own ears. "Starting tomorrow, of course," said Cheerily. "We girls need to talk for a while first. You know, Big Mac brought a bottle of Sweet Apple Acres finest over to my place." "Sounds delicious," said Sugar Belle. "We'll see you later, Mac." "Until the day," she added, walking beside Cheerily with her hips gently swaying, bumping her equal sign cutie mark up against the three smiling flowers on her counterpart's hips. "Until the night," added Cheerily, swaying along in perfect step with the other mare. Trixie was really appreciating the night. And friends. And family. But for now, leaning against the balcony rail of her new home and looking out across the Ponyville Valley, she was just enjoying being alone for a second. The main floor of the library was awash in sound, with Scootaloo's parents being the life of the party, mostly because they worked a night shift in Cloudsdale anyway and were used to the inverted scheduling. Trixie's own friends were right there with them all, even though all of the foals had conked out for the night, and the newest little foal had been shuffled off to the hospital with her mother for a delayed checkout. It was much different than most parties that Trixie had attended, where the attendees trickled away until only Trixie was left. The library had gotten fuller and more friendly as ponies dropped by, even after the princesses and the rich family had departed. Thankfully, Pinkie Pie had brought more food, because Trixie's refreshments and the gumbo had already been eaten down to the last drop, and Rainbow Dash had been caught licking the bottom of the hot pot. And then Pinkie had been caught licking Rainbow Dash. Thankfully, it stopped there, but Trixie found she really needed a breath of fresh air. She just did not expect to be sharing that air with an insect. Tall grass. Trixie eyed the fake zebra. "What are you doing here?" The disguised changeling shrugged and leaned across the balcony rail next to her. "Every buggy has a place. This one just has your face." Trixie rolled her eyes. "Oh, that's bad. Look, I know I missed you on my apology tour. I call you a bug sometimes, and I'd like to apologize. For calling you a bug, that is, not that you are one. After all, you're the first pony ever to trust me, and..." "Celestia." "Well," Trixie fidgeted. "Other than Celestia. Anyway. And Spike." "About as far as I can throw a gem," admitted Trixie, "but yes, I suppose. Anyway. And Queen." "I mean Princess Cadance," said Tallgrass. "Yes, her," said Trixie with a dismissive wave. "Anyway. And her mate, Prince Consort Shining Armor." Yes, I know," snapped Trixie. "Anyway. And I talked with Big Mac at the market the other day. He said you're not his type for romance, and he said it rather emphatically, but he said he'd be happy to have you as a friend." Sober. "All right, there've been a few ponies dumb enough to trust me before, but you're the dumbest. I mean trustingest." Trixie frowned. "Most trusting." Tallgrass did not say anything, but did give Trixie a long look. "And menace," said Trixie. The changeling shook his head. "You saved Princess Luna's life, and..." "We saved Princess Luna," corrected Trixie. "Well, mostly Twilight. If it were just us instead, they'd both be dead. Why does this trouble your pointed head?" It was a good point. Everything had been going Trixie's way for far too long. Days, even. All my life since I started school, I've been a solo act. "Spike," said Tallgrass. "Okay," blurted out Trixie. "A solo act with a sidekick. Now I'm part of an ensemble." Tallgrass shrugged. "All my life I've been part of a choir. Now I'm part of a duet. Or a trio. A quartet in a year, as long as Zekora doesn't have her bug baby in my bed." Menace can't help but talk about having a little sibling. She feels displaced. "I told her this is an opportunity to be a good big sister." "Like you," said Tallgrass. "Yes," said Trixie. "No. Oh, stars. Now I get to screw up 2 lives at once." "Mayor Trixie," said Tallgrass with a cocked eyebrow. Trixie grunted. "Yeah, I see your point. I get to screw up a lot of lives. But only for a week until they hold the election." There was a flash of green light from the changeling and Trixie found herself looking at herself as an alicorn. "You said you wanted to become a princess." "Yes, but..." Trixie took the time to make a long, appreciative pause, "not just for Tallgrass talent. You know, I'd look pretty good as an alicorn. If it wasn't for all that pesky responsibility and the chance of turning all of Equestria into a molten desert." The balcony became host to a quiet sob that could only have come from one pony, making Trixie roll her eyes. "Menace! Come out here, please." There was a certain amount of silence before the tiny form of Twilight Sparkle emerged into the moonlight, looking even smaller than normal. Trixie lowered herself onto one knee, ran a hoof through the alicorn's stubbly mane, and then brought her in for a gentle hug. "Trixie gets all tied up with her own problems and forgets about you at times." Her impulsive words provoked a brief sniff and an intensification of the resulting hug. "Friends help." There was really no arguing with logic like that, particularly with her air supply being restricted by an energetic alicorn, so Trixie merely grunted and stayed put. Tallgrass coughed briefly after the hug showed no signs of stopping and moved back to the doorway. "Trixie, I'll just go back to the party and cover for you, since..." Which left only the two of them together under the stars. "He's going to talk to my parents while wearing the Trixie corn disguise," muttered Trixie into Twilight's mane. "And I thought they'd never let me live down being mayor." Twilight stopped her quiet sobbing for a brief snicker, which was exactly the reaction Trixie was looking for. She leaned back out of the hug for a moment and looked into the tiny alicorn's dark eyes, trying not to think about how powerful the little dynamo was going to be when she got older. "You've got nothing to worry about tomorrow, kid." Trixie gave her a wink. "All of your friends and my friends are going to be in Canterlot right with you. All you're really going to need is a box of tissues to soak up the tears, and maybe a neck brace if your mother hugs the way you do." Twilight sniffled, and Trixie produced a kerchief for her to blow into. "Thanks," she whispered. "Still something missing." "Well," Trixie leaned closer and whispered into Twilight's furry ear. "I've got a box of skyrockets hidden in the basement in a crate labeled Romance Stories. We could shoot them off tonight. Think that would help?" Twilight looked up, not at Trixie as she expected, but at the lights of the mountain city so far above Ponyville, then slowly even further up until she was looking at the stars with occasional bursts of fireworks painting them in streams of light. Yes. Far above them, in the city of Canterlot, a pair of blue-green eyes looked down at the same bursts of sparks for a long time before Tempest turned away from the cheerful sight with a low growl. "Always a party around here. Just wait, little ponies. My turn is coming soon. It's now or never." Green Grass peeked out the balcony window at the starlit sky and scowled at the relative few clouds he could see. The Griffin had not been collecting them for the farmer's rain like they were supposed to, leaving far too much open space to cover between their present mountain fortress and their destination of the small village of Toenail. "You're too close to falling, and I don't trust the Griffins one more second. Something has them all riled up, and it's coming to a head." He flexed his shoulder, and the thin line of healed stitches in it only made him wince slightly at the pain. It was about as good as it was going to get, and his wife was moving more comfortably with her pregnancy, which was either a good or bad sign. Reaching around his neck carefully to get into his bit pouch, Green Grass got out his last equestrian bit with the portrait of Celestia on the front and the illustrated starburst on the back, and balanced the coin on his hoof. "Heads, you head down to the village while I make a distraction," started Green Grass. "Tails, I head down to the village and you lock yourself in the room. Pretend I'm sick. Something contagious." "They'll kill you," whispered Stargazer, clutching her swollen belly. "Even if I make it down to the village and they can get me smuggled out of the valley, the Griffins will kill you. It's the only option we have left. Trixie hasn't found the messages I've been sticking in my thesis, or she would have told Princess Celestia, and there'd be 100 royal guards swooping down on this place." Green Grass eyed the closed door, and the towel he had stuck under the bottom to muffle any sound. Although they were speaking in whispers, and Griffins were notoriously as hard of hearing as they were sharp-sighted, he did not want to take any more suicidal chances than he had to. "Your village has to have at least one pony who can gallop to the next town, outside of the valley, and get a message to Celestia. There've been too many pony servants vanishing around here. Too many unexplained bloodstains. This has to stop, and the only way it will is if one of us can get word to her." "Ready?" Stargazer nodded. "Heads," she whispered. Green Grass tossed the coin up in the air, watching it spin, until it landed on the floor. And stuck, on edge. "Stupid cracks," muttered Green Grass as he pried the coin out from between two floorboards. Once freed, he tossed the coin in a spinning path through the air again, until it landed on the floor, bounced several times, and again. Green Grass cocked his head and peered at the coin, sitting on edge on the floor with no sign of falling over. "If I didn't know better, I'd say Trixie is to blame." "Toss it again," said Stargazer. "This time, I'll take tails." 7 tosses later, they both stared at the vertical coin. "It's not weighted odd," said Green Grass, picking up the coin and going as far as to bite it once. "I'm frightened," said Stargazer. She pulled her hind legs up as far around her barrel as she could and rocked back and forth. "I knew I should have jumped out the window." "You promised to stop thinking about that," said Green Grass. "I don't care." Stargazer fairly exploded with fury, grabbing the coin away from Green Grass and flinging it at the ceiling. "Heads, we both make a run for the village, tails we jump." Green Grass grabbed for the coin, only to have it slip out of his grasp, bounce once, and vanish into a crack in the floorboards. Far below, they could hear the sharp ping of impact, several smaller pings as the coin bounced, a long, rolling noise, and a faint chink as it landed in something metallic. "That sounded like a cash box," whispered Green Grass. "Go downstairs and look," whispered Stargazer. "They can't all be standing on edge." Green Grass thought for a long moment, then shook his head. "I'm staying with you." "You're not my husband," said Stargazer, sounding considerably calmer. "That doesn't mean I'm not your friend," countered Green Grass. "I met a very special pony in Ponyville who taught me about how powerful friendship is. How it can overcome any obstacle, no matter how impossible it may seem." He paused with a frown. "I just realized what this is." "What?" whispered Stargazer. "A trap." No. Green Grass looked out the balcony window at the faint glimmer of lights across Canterlot near the horizon. "It's a test. I don't know who is doing it, or why, but we're going to have to wait to see how it works out."